Hello and Assalamu alaikum. I am Kashif Kamran and I welcome you to the day 4 of the Advanced Audit and Assurance Practice to Pass webinar for December 2019 exams being organized by ACCA Pakistan. Now, the agenda of the fourth day of this Practice to Pass webinar is to focus on the question number 3 of the exam paper. And again, looking at the untouched areas. Now, just like my previous 3 days, where the focus has been on looking at the question number 1 and the question number 2. Now, today on the fourth day, I'll be looking at the fourth day, I'll be looking at September 18 question number 3, December 18 question number 3, and June 19 question number 3. Because since the new format of the paper has come in from September 18 exams, we know there are 3 questions in the paper. Question 1, we have already addressed that. Question 2, we addressed that yesterday. And question 3, I will be addressing it today. So 3 questions to focus on today. And the aim is to explore the untouched area in terms of the question 3 practice. Now, first of all, just like my previous days, we need to establish some insights about question 3 and some insights about examiner expectations from question 3, because the ultimate objective is to bridge the gap between the student and the examiner. Because if there is a gap between the student mindset and the examiner mindset, then ultimately the student will struggle in the exam hall. But if the gap between the examiner mindset and the student mindset is reduced, now when you go to the exam hall, you will perform better. So the purpose of this AAA webinar is to bridge the gap between the student and the examiner. And that's exactly what I am trying to justify or illustrate over the last 3 days. And that's exactly what I will be illustrating today on the fourth day by taking into account the question number 3 of the exam paper. Now, the recommended articles, just like each day, I have been recommending articles, and that has been one of the most emphasizable area of this webinar is to inform students the articles and the importance of reading articles. Now, the recommended articles for question 3 today are 2, which is right in front of your screen. One is the performance information in the public sector, and the other one is the forensic accounting. Now, why these 2 are recommended articles, you will just get to know that in the next 5 minutes. But these are 2 recommended articles for the question 3 of the exam paper, one being performance information in the public sector and one being the forensic accounting. Now let's explore the question 3 in details. First of all, for question 3, we need to have the time spent allocation. And I have been consistently informing you since the day 1, the time allocation we need for each question. We know we have 1.95 minutes per mark. So when we have a 25 marks question, we'll straight away multiply the 25 marks with 1.95 minutes and we'll get an answer. Whatever the answer is, we'll take 1/4 of the time, 1/4 of the total time in terms of reading and planning. Reading and planning time, RAPT, reading and planning time. And the remaining 3/4 time will be allocated on writing. And this is the formula I am consistently using since the day 1. So 25 marks multiply by 1.95. Whatever answer you get, 1/4 of that time should be on reading and planning, and 3/4 of that time should be on writing the answer. And that's the only way you can complete your 100 marks paper. And that's the only way you can be assured that you have done a good paper. Because reading and planning time is such an important phenomena. And a lot of time, students compromise the reading and planning time. And students don't give a proper time allocation to reading and planning time. So time spent for each question is very important. Now, the important thing with this question 3, as I was even mentioning yesterday, this is the most open question in AAA. And this is the surprise package in the AAA paper, being the most open question. We know the question number 1 is set at the planning stage or at the stage of accepting a new audit client. That's very sure. We know the question number 2 is set at the completion and reporting stage. But the question number 3 is the most open question. And for that reason, you can expect anything within the question 3. But obviously the parameters which are examined in the question 1 or the parameters which are examined in the question 2, they cannot come in the question 3. But you know there is a big syllabus of AAA. So minus the question 1, minus the question 2, and you look at the question 3, there is still a big area which is unexplored and can come in question 3. So question 3 is the most challenging question and is the most open question. And today, during this session, you will realize the importance and you will realize how you should be preparing yourself for the third question. Now let's drill the question 3 down. In the question 3, syllabus area F is quite a consistent area when it comes to question 3, and I'll make you realize that since September 18, when the new format of the paper came in, and towards the last exam sitting, which was September 19, that's almost 5 exam sittings: September 18, December 18, March 20, June 20, and June 19, March 19, and September 19. So since September 18 to September 19, there are a total of 5 exam sittings. And syllabus area F, which is basically other assignments, which is part of your syllabus, and I've covered them in each of my previous webinar, has been examined thrice. 3 out of 5 exam settings. So that means syllabus area F, even the examiner in the syllabus guide do refer that syllabus area F will be examined in the section B of the syllabus, section B of the paper. So section B is the question 2 and question 3. Now we know question 2 is for completion and reporting. So eventually question 3 is where the syllabus area F is to be tested. So syllabus area F, other assignments, is a syllabus area which is examinable in this question, but it has been very frequently examined. I'll make a grid and you will realize how important syllabus area F has been. And the good thing is that the syllabus area F has been fully covered in each of my previous webinars. So there is nothing new I can do in the syllabus area F because I've covered each and every dimension of the syllabus area F in my previous webinar. Ethical, professional, and quality control issue is another area which can come in the question number 3. And we know this is an area which can fall anywhere in the paper. We know ethical and professional issues can come in the question 1. Ethical and professional issues can come even in the question 2, and they can even be in the question 3. So this is the most open syllabus area, right? So many times you must have seen ethical and professional issues within the first question. You must have seen that in the second question. Even yesterday, when we were discussing the question 2 breakdown, it was in the question 2 breakdown. So that's quite a regular area, right, of your exam paper and can come in any of the question. Knowledge areas like money laundering. I'm just giving an example, but the emphasis is on the knowledge areas. And I'll be spending time on the knowledge areas tomorrow. The session session day 5, and the day 5 has been purposely kept for this webinar just to explore the knowledge areas, because students do not realize the importance of the knowledge area when they go to the exam hall. And there has been so much testing of the knowledge areas in the question 3 and even in the question 1. So knowledge areas like money laundering, for example, can even be examined in the question number 3. Any recent articles can also be examined in the question 3. And we know there is a recent article, and I will be doing the recent article tomorrow on day 5. So the recent article on data analytics uh, has a very high likelihood of being examined in the question 3. And I'll be doing the data analytics article tomorrow on the day 5. So any recent article can also come in the question 3. And procedures and evidence can also come in the question 3. So see how diversified this question is. Syllabus area F, which is about other assignments, is part of the question 3, but you will not find syllabus area F in each and every exam sitting. You can also find ethical and professional issues in question 3. You can find knowledge areas in question 3. You can even find the recent articles in the question 3, and you can find procedures and evidence in the question 3 as well. So that's the most open, diversified, and the challenging question in the exam paper. Now, just before I proceed further, I want to make you very clear about the question 3. And if I just construct a table for you, and in this table, I do an analysis for you just to make you realize how important the question 3 sounds like. Okay, now when you look at the question 3 on the day 4, and you realize how important question 3 is, if I mention the exam settings since the question 3 started to came in, the first exam sitting was September 18, followed by that was December 18, then followed by that was March 19, June 19, and the very last exam sitting, September 19. And you are now appearing for the December 19 exam sitting. So let's even insert a row for that. And you are appearing for December 19 exams. Now, when you look at the question 3 in September 18, the September 18 question 3 was on review of prospective financial information. Review of prospective financial information, which was basically the syllabus area F. This was the syllabus area F, which is known as other assignments. Now the examiner has given this very clearly that syllabus area F, which is other assignments, can be part of the question 3, and examiner did materialize that in the very first exam sitting. Then in December 18, examiner came with a question on money laundering plus ethical, professional, and quality control issues. So examiner came with money laundering plus ethical, professional, and quality control issues in the December 18 exam sitting. Then in the March 19, examiner came with due diligence review, and due diligence review came in the question 3, which was a syllabus area F. So that was the second time it was examined. Now in June 19, the examiner tested a current article, the recent article, which was basically the current issue at that time in June 19. And the current issue article at that time was basically ISA 540 revised, which was about accounting estimates. So the examiner wrote an article on accounting estimates prior to the June 19 exam sitting, and the examiner tested the entire article in the question 3 ISA 540 revision. And I'll show you that, and we will be doing this question today in the live session. So this was basically the current issue which came in the June 19. Then in September 19, examiner came with a question on forensic accounting, the last exam setting. So on forensic accounting, another syllabus area F was examined. Now look at the situation. You are going for December 19. Now we have seen a very consistent track here. We cannot take this hypothetical assumption, but you can see something happening in this table if you carefully visualize the table. In September 18, we had a syllabus area F, other assignments. Then after one attempt, in March 19, we had a syllabus area F. Then after a gap of one attempt in September 19, we had a syllabus area F. So the syllabus area F is going on a very consistent track that it comes in one exam sitting and it goes off in the next. Then it comes back, goes off. So we cannot take an hypothetical assumption that it cannot come in December 19. Examiner can break the rule. But I hope you can see something happening in the table. Then in December 18, there was knowledge. There was knowledge examined in December 18, money laundering. And in the June 19, there was a current issue. Now that makes a very perfect definition of question 3. That question 3 is about syllabus area F. Question 3 is about knowledge areas. Question 3 is about current issues. And question 3 is even about ethical, professional, and quality control issues. And question 3 is also about procedures. In the June 19 question, where the recent article was tested, the recent article tested was also part of procedures. Examiner did ask procedures on accounting estimates. So is everyone clear on the diversity of the question 3? And have you seen the scanning of the prior exam setting? So do the prior exam setting gives you any message for December 19 exams? Now there is a chance that when you are preparing for December 19, firstly, you should be preparing for December 19 with syllabus area F. And some of the other assignments which have not yet been examined, like review of prospective financial information has been examined, due diligence have been examined, forensic accounting have been examined. But there is an assignment which is not yet examined and which has been a very consistent part of the prior papers, known as audit of performance information. And that's the reason I recommended this article for day 4 today. And students should read this article. So syllabus area F, audit of performance information, seems important. You cannot ignore this for December 19 exams. Then the current issue. The current issue, there is an article, and the article on current issue has already been published, which is known as data analytics. So examiner can test you for data analytics. And then obviously anything can come in knowledge. And we are preparing the knowledge areas tomorrow on the day 5. So is everyone sound on the definition of the question 3? I've given you the breakdown of September 18. I've given you the breakdown of December 18. I've given you the breakdown for March 19. Have given you the breakdown for June 19 and for September 19. And on that basis, you can see a track. On that track basis, can we still expect other assignments coming in? Yes. We cannot take an hypothetical assumption, but we know there are 4 other assignments in the syllabus. 3 of them has been examined. 1 of them is still remaining. There is a chance examiner can even repeat something. Examiner can give you review of prospective financial information again. You cannot just go into exam hall with selective study. You have to prepare the syllabus area F in full. But yes, the chances of audit of performance information is greater. But you cannot go in the exam hall without revising each and every topic of syllabus area F. Current issues. You should go down in the exam hall reading the current issues. knowledge areas, which I will be doing in the session tomorrow. So is everyone clear on the question 3 and what comes in question 3? And have you realized from the past exam settings how things have changed within question 3? So syllabus area F, one of the core part of question 3. Have I covered this in my previous webinars? Yes. And I want to make that realizable. If you look at my previous webinars, I've already covered the syllabus area F, which is known as other assignments, which is the syllabus area F. And I've covered that in my previous webinars. I've given the link, the syllabus F. I've covered the syllabus area F in my previous webinars. So you can go down and watch these webinars and be better prepared on syllabus area F. I've even done audit of performance information, right? And I've covered the audit of performance information in my previous webinar. So if you want to be good on audit of performance information and how you should be going about it, you should be exploring my previous webinars for that. Again, ethical and professional issues is another area which I've consistently covered in my previous webinars. You can see the links here. Procedures and evidence. Again, I've covered them in my previous webinars. So most of the topics which comes in question 3 have gone in my previous webinars. The links have been given. And I want to explore some different things today in question 3, which I have not touched upon in my previous webinar. So I will not be wasting my time on syllabus area F, because for that you can see the library of the lectures or library of the previous sessions which have been maintained by ACCA Pakistan. For ethical and professional issue, you can do the same. For procedures, you can do the same. But I will be preparing you on the current issue in the session tomorrow, day 5. I will be preparing you on the knowledge areas in the session tomorrow, day 5. But I will be practicing the question 3 today to find what has been the unusual areas where I should be giving you more guidance. Right, so just one last scan and starting on with practice. So syllabus area F, this has already been done in the previous webinars, and you have to see them from the previous webinars. Then current issues, data analytics, I'll do this on day 5 tomorrow. Knowledge areas I'll be doing tomorrow in day 5. So today we are just spending time on question 3, analyzing question 3, seeing what have come in question 3, and how you should be preparing yourself effectively for question 3. And any major areas from within the question 3, which is like knowledge areas or current issues, I'll be exploring that in the session tomorrow. I hope everyone is clear with that structure. Okay, now if I take you to the ACCA website where the technical articles are kept, because every day I am making you realize that you need to visit this website, and on a consistent basis, each day I have been on this website and I've been exploring this website, guiding you about the importance of reading articles. Now, if you explore down this website, and I just want to do a more deep insight analysis today before I take on the practice of the question 3. Now, if you see this website in front of you, you can see that the very first 5 articles on this website are basically known as the technique article. You can see examiner heading of the article in red. The very first article says exam technique article part 1 ethics. Then the second article says exam technique article part 2 risk. Then the third article says exam technique article part 3 accounting issues. Then the fourth says exam technique article part 4 audit procedures. And the fifth says exam technique article part 5 reporting. I'll be sharing all these technique articles as a bundle tomorrow in the day 5 as a resource, but these are downloadable, right? The first 5 articles are technique articles, right? These are must, because if you don't know the techniques, you don't know what mistakes the student do, because these are technique articles, right? And the meaning of the technique article is that they will tell you how to write an answer. If you want to know how to write an answer on audit reporting, you want to know how to write an answer on audit procedures, you want to know how to write an answer on accounting issues, you want to know how to write an answer on risk, and you want to know how to write an answer on ethics, then these are wonderful articles, technique article. So make one bundle, and this bundle is known as technique articles. 5 articles. Download them, take a printout, maintain a file, and name them as technique articles. So these 5 technique articles are must. Now, once you complete the 5 technique articles, you should explore recent articles on ACCA website minus the technique articles. And the very first recent article after the technique article is data analytics and the auditor. Now, this is an unexamined article, and this is an article which holds potential for question 3 or holds potential anywhere in the 100 marks paper coming up in December. This is just an assumption, right? An assumption can go wrong even, but this is an unexplored article. So can an examiner gives you 10 marks, 15 marks from this article in December exams, whether in question 1 or in 2 or in 3? Yes, the chances are very high. So this is a must to read article. So this is the most recent article, right? After that, as a student, you should read other recent articles, even though they have been examined. All the other articles after data analytics have been examined. Audit in a specialized industry, this has been examined. ISA 540, this is what I was mentioning, right? ISA 540 was a current issue in prior to the June exams. And in the June exam, the examiner put this in the June exam in the question 3. So in the June 19 exams, this came as a question number 3. So see, if you went to June 19 exams without reading ISA 540 and you get a whole 25 marks question on this, you will regret yourself, right? That it would have been better that I enter the June 19 exams with reading of ISA 540. So examiner issued an article on ISA 540 prior to the exam setting of June 19, and it was the student responsibility to read it and go to the exam hall. And those of the student who read it and went to the exam hall did pass the June 19 exams, and those who didn't had to reappear in exams in September 19. So are you realizing the importance of reading the recent articles? ISA 540 has been examined, but can it come back? Yes. So try to make a habit of reading the recent articles, right? So minus the technique articles, at least if you can read the top 10 recent articles. And if you see the top 10 recent articles, they start from data analytics. So from data analytics, you go down. From data analytics, you go down and at least read 10 articles starting from data analytics. Is that clear with everyone? So from data analytics, go down and read 10 articles. So data analytics number 1, audit in a specialized industry number 2, ISA 543, evaluation of misstatement 4th, and you go down. So wherever the 10 ends, at least should be your priority. I have been recommending articles on daily basis. I've recommended you more than 10 articles, but I hope you explore this area, you explore this website very carefully. So I just need a quick feedback from all of you. Is everyone clear on the articles and the reading of articles now? And has everyone realized the importance of technique articles? Have everyone realized the importance of the technique articles? Reading the technique articles, going through the technique articles, the five technique articles. And after the 5 technique articles, you need to read at least 10. But I have been recommending articles on a daily basis, right? So you need to see what articles I recommended on day 1, day 2, day 3, and now on day 4. And I'll be recommending more on day 5. So there will be more than 10. But has everyone realized the importance of reading data analytics? So will you be reading data analytics before the session tomorrow? Because I'll be going through this article tomorrow, and I would prefer if you read it before, because that will make the session really interesting. So all of you who have not yet read this article, please do read it. And then when you come into the session tomorrow, you will have a better understanding of the article, right? So I hope you can realize the importance of ISA 540. A complete 25 marks question came on ISA 540. And if any one of you appeared in June 19 exams, you must have regretted yourself not to prepare ISA 540 when the article was given. So is everyone clear on importance and reading these articles? And do you realize your self-interest associated with these articles? And we know we do everything for our self-interest. So do you believe these articles have a self-interest? Each and every one of you have a self-interest in this article, and that self-interest is your success. So do you think these articles are linked to your success? And is that the success of every student? And is that every student objective of appearing in the December 19 exams? And we know we are so good on our self-interest, right? So when something is your self-interest, why you compromise it? You should not compromise it. So I hope everyone is getting a loud and clear message now of the importance of reading the articles, and that is my emphasizable part of this December 19 webinar, to make you realize the importance of resources which ACCA puts on the website for the student fraternity. And it's up to the student fraternity how much time are they spending. A lot of time you go into books and you ignore these articles. A lot of time you just spend time on textbooks and you ignore these articles. Whenever and I have been mentioning this consistently, that articles are more important than books because they're examiner articles, right? So of this, and you should be making notes, right, of the articles, because retention of the article is very difficult. So you should make short notes, or make a flow chart, or make a synopsis, make a summary, and you should make a mind map. If you make a mind map of an article, that's so good. I hope everyone knows making mind maps, or you can learn techniques of making mind maps over the Google and see how to make a mind map of something theoretical. So mind mapping techniques are so good, right? You can do mind mappings, and mind mappings is the best way to retain knowledge. And I hope if any one of you are using mind mapping techniques are the best way you can retain theoretical knowledge for any exam paper. Okay, now off the emphasized articles, back to my presentation. Now, before I just start on with the question 3, let's revise the time we have for question 3 in exam paper. Now, in an exam paper, your question number 3 has a total time your question number 3 has a total time of 48.75 minutes. So rounding it off, you have 49 minutes. That's a good enough time. And out of the 49 minutes, you have 12 minutes for planning. So you have 37 minutes to write the answer. I've seen so many times students complaining about incomplete paper. I would recommend you that do one paper at least on 1.95 minutes advice. This advice which I've given you in the December webinar, do at least 1 or 2 papers on this formula, 1.95, and see what result you get. You will be amazed that your answer quality will improve. You will be amazed that the time you're spending on reading and planning, the 1/4 time, will really contribute towards your success. So I hope you realize the importance of reading and planning on day 1, day 2, day 3, how you read the requirement, how you break the requirement, how you understand the requirement before you rush to the answer. A lot of times the student just rush to the answer. I hope you start to realize the importance of reading and planning time. So let's start on with question 3 now. 49 minutes in total, 12 minutes of reading and planning time, and 37 minutes of the writing time we have for question number 3. Okay, now let's take on the practice questions. Okay, the very first question in front of your screen is from the December 18 exams, the question number 3 of the December 18 exams. December 18, question number 3. Let's explore anything which I have done in the previous webinar, I'll not do it. If something is new, I'll be doing it. December 18 exam paper, the second when the new format came in, and the student went to the exam hall and realized that the question number 3 was on money laundering. And if you're unprepared on knowledge areas, if you have been unprepared on the whole syllabus, see, these practice to pass sessions are just 15 hours, and they can just give you an eye opener. They can just open your mindset. They cannot give you 100% syllabus, right? It is your responsibility to go with 100% syllabus. At least this message has to be disseminated. This message has to be communicated to every student appearing in triple exam that you have to prepare the 100% syllabus. This 15 hours is just to give you an overview of the main things, overview of the important things, and just to make you realize the importance of some very important techniques and the examiner mindset. But when you expect this 15 hours and you think in this 15 hours, whatever you learn and you will go down to the exam hall and you will pass the paper, no. This 15 hours is just a bridge, but you need your 100% syllabus with you when you need to cross the bridge. I hope everyone has taken this advice very carefully, right? Okay, December 18, question number 3. Let's explore the requirement. Question 3 starts, and this is where we get the very first requirement of question 3 for 10 marks. Discuss the policies and procedures which Thomason and Company should have in place in relation to anti-money laundering program. And we know this is knowledge. Policies and procedures which an audit firm, Thomason and Company, audit firm, policies and procedures which an audit firm should have in place with regards to anti-money laundering. And this is part of your textbook. This anti-money laundering policies and procedures are given in the BPB book, even in the Kaplan book, and they're so easy to revise. They're so easy to be done. Policies and procedures. So for every policy and procedure, I'll get 1 mark. So because procedures and policies are something which score 1 mark in AAA paper. So discuss the policies and procedures. So if I discuss 4 policies and procedures, I'll take on these 4 marks here. So that's pure knowledge. Then in the second part, it says evaluate whether there are any indicators of money laundering. So I need to evaluate whether there are any indicators of money laundering. And for that, I need to see the case, because in the case, there might be some indicators. So I have 6 marks for identifying the indicators for money laundering. And each of those indicators will give me like 1.5 marks. So 1.5 marks per indicator. And for policies and procedures, 1 mark. Now, indicators will be in the case study. If I know what money laundering is, I can find the indicators in the case study. But the policies and procedures have nothing to do with the case, because it says discuss the policies and procedures which an audit firm should have in place. So I should know this from my book and produce it for 4 marks. But 6 marks is where I have to see the case, and from the case I have to see where are the indicators of money laundering. So that's 6 and 4, 10 marks, right? Then you see this B part of the question, which is for 15 marks. And this is the question I will not be doing, because this is something which I've been doing consistently in my previous webinar. Comment on the ethical and professional issues. You know this area. and you know this area has been done so many times in my previous webinar, ethical and professional issues. I have already informed the marking scheme for ethical and professional issues in my previous webinar. And with ethical and professional issues, you also need to recommend the actions. Recommend any actions. Now we know we get 1 mark for an issue, we get 1 mark for an issue, and we get 1 mark for an action. So we have 1 mark for every issue we write, and we have 1 mark for every action we write. And we need to take our score up to 15. So we need to make the score going up to 15, finding an issue, and with an issue, writing an action. The action is the mitigation, how we will mitigate the issue. So that is been an area which has consistently gone in the previous webinar. So I'll not be touching upon the syllabus area B. But money laundering, a knowledge area. Do we expect we go to the exam hall without having knowledge of money laundering? And I just want to make you realizable of the importance of money laundering policies and procedures with regards to anti-money laundering program and whether there are indicators of money laundering. So let's start on with this question, the first one for the session today. And let's explore knowledge on money laundering. Let's see, do you have a good knowledge on money laundering? December 18, question number 3. And when we look at the part A, the part A is dealing with money laundering. And the examiner has given 10 marks on money laundering. The first part of the 10 marks is to discuss the policies and procedures for anti-money laundering, by an audit firm, anti-money laundering, and we have 4 marks for this. And then in the second part, we need to identify the indicators of money laundering in the case study. And for that we have 6 marks. So that's the breakup of the 10 marks, right? So do you realize the importance of reading the question, breaking the question? See, every time before I start writing the answer, I try to visualize it. I try to break it. So I know what I need to do. Now I know I need to do policies and procedures, and I need to do the money laundering indicators, right? And please be assured of the revised marking schemes, right? I've been consistently mentioning the revised marking schemes in my previous webinar and in my June webinar and in my March webinar, that the revised marking schemes for ethical and professional issues is 1 mark now. 1 mark for every ethical and professional issue and 1 mark for action. So you need to go with revised marking schemes, right? Please assure you listen to my previous webinars of March, June, September, so you're aware of the updates in the recent marking schemes. Okay, now that means we need to do something on money laundering. So we should have knowledge. We should have knowledge of the policies and procedures. What policies and procedures should a firm have for anti-money laundering? And if I can just show you that, you can see them from the textbook even, right? But just to make you realize of this, if I can just show you one instance of money laundering from my presentation I do on money laundering as a tutor. Everyone should know the policies and procedures which should be in place by an audit firm. And see the answer. This is the answer. You need to write any 4 in the exam paper. Anti-money laundering guidance. The first anti-money laundering guidance, I cannot go in depth. You need to revise this later from the textbook. The very first guidance is that the firm should have a MLRO. A firm should appoint a money laundering reporting officer. That is very important. That's one of the guidance, because the money laundering reporting officer will then need to be skeptical about any money laundering issues going within the audit lines. More time should be spent on the client identification process. So when you identify a client, when you take on a new client, more time should be spent on a client identification process. The client anti-money laundering procedures should be discussed and reviewed. When you go to an audit, you should discuss the anti-money laundering procedures with the client. An audit firm should keep the records for 5 years, because if any litigation comes on the audit firm with regards to money laundering, you can defend yourself with your working papers. And the members of the firm should not tip off. That means the members of the firm should not conceal information about money laundering about their client. If you think your client is involved in money laundering, it is better to disclose that to the MLRO rather than concealing it. Because if you conceal the information of your client with regards to money laundering, you are coming under a criminal offense. So you can see a summary of anti-money laundering guidance by ACCA, which is part of your syllabus and has been in my presentation, which I do for my regular course. But you can just you will get this captured in the recording, which you will get later of the day 4. So you can take notes from it and you can revise it from your textbooks later, the BPP or the Kaplan textbook. So this is anti-money laundering guidance by ACC, right? And that is exactly what your examiner was asking in the 4 marks. Knowledge, policies and procedures for anti-money laundering. So you need to write any 4 of them, right? Any 4 for 4 marks. Then in the second part, it is asking us the indicators. Indicators of money laundering. And for that, we need to read the case to identify whether the client is involved in money laundering or not. So let's read the case quickly and see whether there are indicators of money laundering within the case study. Now, just before we go through the indicator process, if I again show you my presentation I do for my regular classes, this is basically the money laundering process in front of your screen. That the money laundering process includes placement as the first activity. So there is a chance there might be a placement happening in the December 18 paper in the case study, layering or integration. We know these are 3 steps of money laundering process, right? And you should have knowledge of the 3 steps. You must have gone over the book for the 3-step process here: placement, layering, integration. And I hope this is a process which you even do in the initial paper of ACC as well. So a lot of time our students are familiar with the money laundering activities: placement, layering, integration. And you need to connect that with indicators in the exam context, right? Let's find what's happening in the December 18 paper to find indicators of money laundering directly from the exam paper. Okay, I'm reading the case. Keep a focus and we'll just underline the important things. You are an audit manager in Thomas & Company, a firm of chartered certified accountants. You have recently been assigned to the audit of Clean Company for the year ended 30th of September. Clean is an unlisted company and has been an audit client of your firm for a number of years. So you have a lot of knowledge about this client because you have been doing it for the last many years. Clean Company is a national distributor of cleaning products. The company buys the cleaning products from the wholesaler and employ a team of approximately 750 sales staff around the country who sell the company's product to both domestic households and small and medium businesses. Around 75% of the Clean Company's sales transactions are cash based. And that's the first issue. Around 75% of the Clean Company's sales transactions are cash based. And when we read the money laundering literature, the money laundering literature tells us any business where the dealing of cash is significant is at a risk of money laundering. Because you have no idea that when your customer is paying you, where the money has come from. The customer who is buying your product can even buy the product from the black money, from the illegal money. Around 75% of the sales are cash based. So you're getting cash. And the money laundering literature, if you can even go on Google and browse Google, tells you that a business which is involved, a business which is involved in cash dealings. There are so many businesses in the world which deals with cash, where the dealings are done in cash. So if there is a cash-based business, then that is prone to money laundering, directly or indirectly. So around 75% sales are made in cash, and each of the company's sales staff prepares a cash sales report on a monthly basis. According to Clean Company's chief executive, Simon, and in order to foster an entrepreneurial spirit amongst the staff, each member is encouraged to make cash sales and is paid on a commission basis to sell the company's products to friends and family. Now this is another risk, right? That when you have a cash based sale and you get commission on that, so you are inclined to make more, and you are irrespective whether the cash is coming from a good source or a bad source. Your focus is to make sales. So you will just try to increase the sales of the company irrespective whether the cash is coming from an illegal source or a cash is coming from a legal source, whether the customer is good or whether the customer is bad. So when there is an encouragement, right, the encouragement is also the risk here, that you are encouraged to make the cash sales more and more. Now that means you're just encouraged to make more sales, and you are irrespective whether the cash is coming from a good source or a bad source. So that sets a further risk. So they are getting to make, is encouraged to make cash sales and is paid on a commission basis too. I'm reading the third last line. Mr. Blackers leads the way with this scheme and recently sold cleaning products with a value of $33,000 to a business associate of his. You sold some cleaning products with a value of $33,000 to a business associate of his. Now, we know whenever you do money laundering is a very complex process. A lot of time there are related party transactions in money laundering, and a lot of time when you see these bigger money laundering scandals in the world, you do find people associated in money laundering have made a lot of associates and subsidiaries and very complex structures because they want to get they don't want to get into legal troubles, right? So they try to make the process very complex. So he sold $33,000 value to a business associate's office. So that's like a related party transaction, not on an arm length basis. Further increases the risk of money laundering, further increases the risk of some wrong business practices. So we need to be very susceptible or very skeptical about the transaction made to business associate, because there could be something of a complex structure, and the complex structure makes money laundering more easier. He has transferred these funds into an offshore bank account. That's another problem. Now, whenever you transfer funds to an offshore account, we need to deal that very skeptically in the company name on which he is the sole signatory. You are the sole signatory when you transfer funds to an offshore bank account. Now we know in money laundering, these banking transactions are very risky. Whenever you deposit a cash in a bank, or whenever you transfer a cash into a bank, this is to be dealt very skeptically, because where the money is coming from, which is going into the bank, and particularly when you do an overseas offshore bank account. Now, why have you opened an offshore bank account? Why the money is going into an offshore banking account? Uh, the money going into the offshore banking account is coming from which source? So a lot of questions can be raised here on Mr. Blacker and the way Mr. Blacker is running the company. So I have underlined a lot of issues which eventually are giving us the indicators that the client is in, there are indicators of money laundering within this company. We got four, right? I have four underlinings. 75% sales are made on cash one. The staff is encouraged to make cash sales irrespective from where the cash is coming from. You made $33,000 selling to an associate, three, and then an offshore bank account 4. So 1.5 multiplied by 4 is giving us 6 marks down. So we found indicators of money laundering. Let's recap. I'm just writing a sketch answer. You need to follow the answer from the examiner. See how the examiner wrote the answer. The first, cash-based sales. The sales staff is encouraged to make more and more sales, versus commission. They will be getting a commission, right? Third, Mr. Blecker uh, Mr. Blecker making sale of $33,000 to his associate. And number fourth, an offshore bank account. Transfer to an offshore bank account. Transfer to an offshore bank account. So there are indicators, right? So whenever you transfer money from one country to another country, or you transfer your cash balance to a bank account, even the bank manager will be very skeptical, knowing from where the money is coming from or the source of money. And when you particularly transfer money from out of your country, we know there are so many restrictions transferring money out of the country, or there are so much check and balance when you transfer money out of your country, because these anti-money laundering laws and regulations are very skeptical about the transfer of money from one country to another country. It's not so easier sending a lot of money from one country to another. Yes, the minor transactions are fine, but when you send a lot of money from one country to another, you come under the skeptical radar. So we know there are banking transfers across the world, but there is a limit of banking transfer. But if you transfer a lot of money, it needs to be dealt skeptically. So please go through the examiner answer for December 18 question 3 part A, the money laundering policies and procedures. I've tried to give you a glimpse of that, and the indicators of money laundering, which was in the case study. You just need to identify them and you need to explain them. But for a sound answer, just read the examiner answer. See how the examiner wrote these indicators in a very proper answer. Right. So, and the second part of the question, which is on ethical and professional issues, I'm not touching upon that because that have already been an area which has been consistently covered in my previous webinar. So that's off December 18 question now. I hope everyone's got some insights from December 18 question. And for a lot of students, you must be doing this question for the very first time. So has this been an insightful question, December 18 question 3? Has it given you a mindset that question 3 can also test your knowledge on the core areas? And is it good to go in exam hall with the revision of knowledge? Can I get your quick feedbacks before I change the question? So has the December 18 question given you some insights about your preparation ahead of your exams? And you should make sketches of answers, right, when you're preparing yourself, and then assure that you try to reconcile your sketch answer with the examiner. A lot of times the student compare the length with the examiner answer. No, your points. If my points match the examiner points, then that's wonderful, because my way of justifying something or examiner way of justifying something will be different. But if my point matches the examiner point, that's good. If I wrote a point cash-based sales and the examiner wrote a point cash-based sales, that's good. If I wrote a point sales staff is encouraged to make more and more sales and the examiner wrote the same point, that's wonderful. I should try to reconcile the points with the examiner, but everyone has a different way of explaining. So my explaining, your explaining, examiner explainings are all different, right? And in the exam hall, each one of us is unique and each one of us has a different way of explaining a point. And if the examiner likes your explanation, he will pass you. Otherwise, he will fail you. So it's a subjective process, right? So don't just get amazed with examiner length of answer. The important thing is that you need to write an answer within a time frame, An examiner is exempt from that time frame, right? So you have a time frame, right? 49 minutes to do the question 3. So you need to fit everything within 49 minutes to be successful. A lot of time the money laundering is done through complex process. The more subsidiaries you have, the more associates you have, the more complex business structures you have, because you need to conceal things. So when you want to conceal things, you try to make the process very complex. So even if the regulator wants to investigate the process, it's very difficult for the regulator. So most of the time the money launderers who do money laundering makes the process very complicated. So even if it is investigated, becomes very difficult. So remember that rule, right? And I'm going off this topic, money laundering now. Okay, so from December 18, let's go to the next question. I'll be doing the June 19 after the break because that's a very important question. But I'm currently doing firstly the September 18. Right, September 18 is on a topic which has already been done in my previous webinar, but I'll try to give you some extra knowledge on this topic, and then you can watch my previous webinars for the critical part of September 18 question number 3. Let's see what was there in September 18 question number 3. Okay, let me prepare for this question. September 18 question 3. September 18 question 3 for 25 marks. Let's see what's inside. Okay, you go down the question 3 of September 18, and it was on other assignments, review of prospective financial information. This was the very first exam setting with the new format of the paper, 3 questions. And in the very first exam setting, the examiner tested the syllabus area F, review of prospective financial information, an area which I have covered in my previous webinars on other assignments. Let's see what is the examiner asking in the very first requirements. 2 requirements, 6 and 9, and then another requirement on the next page. In the very first 2 requirements, the examiner is asking, explain the methods which should be considered by Jensen and Company, the audit firm, before accepting the engagement to review and report on the prospective financial information. Explain the methods which should be considered by the audit firm, Jensen, before accepting the engagement. This is such a key topic of AAA exams that as a student, you should know what matters a firm consider before accepting an engagement, irrespective whether it is a prospective financial information, whichever engagement you are accepting. We know engagements are many, right? Engagements are all the audit services and non-audit services. Syllabus area F, there are so many engagements: due diligence review, review of prospective financial information, the audit of the performance information, and in the last exam setting, the forensic accounting. So explain the matters which should be considered by Jensen before accepting the engagement, whatever the engagement is. Now you need to be very critical that whenever a question like such comes in, which asks you matters an audit firm should consider, matters an audit firm should consider before accepting an engagement. Engagement means a service. Before accepting a service, fill in the blank, whatever the service is. This is practice management, right? And I think I was discussing a bit of that even in the day one when I was discussing the question one and syllabus area known as practice management. That as a student, you should know how you accept a new client and how you accept a service, how you accept a service from an existing client. And you should know these parameters, you should know these matters which the audit firm should be considering before accepting an engagement. So let's revise the parameters. When you are accepting an engagement as an audit firm, this is such an important matter, right? Where that a service comes to you and you want to accept a service. And when you accept a service, there is a parameter. And this parameter in your syllabus is known as practice management. The audit firm can do two things, right? Either you are accepting a new client or you are accepting a service from an existing client. Is that true? If I can get your quick answers to that. Either you are accepting a new client in the exam paper, you're accepting a new client in the exam paper, or you are accepting a service from an existing client in the exam paper. There cannot be a third situation, right? There cannot be a third situation. So the first situation is accepting a new audit client. And the second situation is accepting a service, accepting an engagement from an existing client. And we know the parameters. If I can just show you my class presentation for this, which I do for my regular classes, just to make you realize the this. If I can just scroll through and take you to that particular slide where I have the answer to this situation. Again, this will be in the recording. It will be captured in the recording for day 4, and that will be very beneficial for you. This is how I deliver things in my regular course, and you can see on the left hand side and on the right hand side, I've covered both the parameters. On the left hand side, you can see methods in accepting a new client. What sort of methods will you consider when you are accepting a new client? And what sort of methods will you be considering when you're accepting a non-audit service from an existing client? Engagement from an existing client, NAS, non-audit service. So you can see these matters on the slide. You can revise these matters. When you are accepting a service from a client, for us, the right hand side is important, right? When I am accepting a service from a client, I should see my competence versus the service I'm offering. Am I competent to offer prospective financial information in the September 18 exams? Is my firm competent to offer prospective financial information in September 18 exams? The deadlines. The deadlines set for the service, are those realistic? Can I do my work within the deadlines? Any ethical issues? Because it's my existing client. So being my existing client, can there be some ethical issues offering this service to the client? What safeguards can I take? And what fees will I be getting from the existing client when I offer this particular service? So can you see the right hand side of the screen, everyone? And is everyone clear on the breakdown of the matters? This will be captured, right? In the recording, the left and the right side. Both are very important. Examiner can ask you the matters in accepting a new client. Examiner can ask you the matters in accepting an engagement from an existing client. So is everyone sound on the matters and sound on a new client and a service from an existing client? Is everyone clear on that? If I can get your quick feedback, is everyone clear on accepting a new client and in accepting a service from an existing client and the matters? And has this been an insightful discussion for you? Yes, when we are accepting a new client, the matters are more. When we are accepting a new client, the matters are more. When we are accepting a service from an existing client, we are less, right? So we need to discuss these matters. which I've just shown you over here. So matters an audit firm should consider before accepting an engagement. Number one matter is competence. Competence versus the nature of service. Nature of service to be offered. Do the firm have competence? Do the firm have skills versus the nature of service to be offered? Skills, skills. So, do the firm have skills? Do the firm have competence versus the nature of service to be offered? So, the firm needs to ask this question to themselves, right? Then, the second thing, deadlines. Are the deadlines realistic? Realistic versus the nature of service? Because some services are very simple, right? Some services are complex. So, realistic versus the nature of service. So is the deadlines realistic versus the nature of service? Is there sufficient time to do it? Sufficient time to perform it? And even the deadlines, right? Even the deadlines versus the scale of the work. How much work I need to do? Because in some engagements the workload is less, in some engagements the workload is more. So I need to see the deadlines in comparison to many things. Then I need to look at some ethical issues because it's my existing client. So being my existing audit client, I need to think about some ethical issues of offering the service to my existing client. There might be a self-interest, there might be a self-review, for example. So I need to read the case for that because it's my existing client. So there might be some ethical issues, right? And I should read this, I should read the case for identifying the ethical issues. Read the case. Then obviously if there is an ethical issue, then you should be having safeguards for ethical issues. And finally, you would be considering your fees versus the nature of service. How much fees will you be getting out of this service depends upon the type of engagement. If it is a complex engagement, a difficult engagement, then you might be getting a lot of money. But it's if it is a more simple one, then you might not be getting a lot of income from the service you're offering. So this is the matters before accepting an engagement. Now, when you look at the question raised in September 18, the September 18 question was asking us the matters and the marks given to us was 6. So we had 6 marks for the matters. So each matter relating to accepting an engagement is worth 1.5 marks. So you need to write 4 matters and make up your 6 marks answer. Whenever you get to write an engagement matter, every matter is worth 1.5 marks, right? And it's our existing client, right? So if it is our existing client, we are not worried about client integrity, or if it is our existing client, we're not worried about the background of the client. When we are accepting a new client, we are worried about the background of the client. When we are accepting a new client, we are worried about the integrity of the client. I hope everyone is sound on that. It is our existing client. So if it is our existing client, so are we worried about the client integrity or the background of the client and something like that? No, because we are accepting an engagement from an existing client. I hope everyone is sound on the breakdown of the matters. And you should be knowing that not just for September 18 exam paper. This is such a fundamental topic of AAA. You are not, you might get something in December 19 exams about a new client. You should know the parameters of the new client. You should know a parameters of a service from an existing client. Is that clear with everyone? And matters you should consider before accepting an engagement. I think I've even recommended an article for that on the day one. When you are accepting an engagement, is there an article? Yes. You go back to the website and you go scrolling the website down. You will find an article here on the website. See this. I recommended this article on the day one. Acceptance decision. See the first one. Acceptance decision for audit and assurance engagement. How you make an acceptance decision for an audit, a new client, and how you make an acceptance decision for an assurance engagement, that is a service from an existing client. And you click this article and it opens up and you get this article in front. And this article is such an important article. What if in December 19 exam paper you get matters for a new client? Or what if in the December 19 paper you get matters for an existing client, assurance from an existing client? So should you know this article? If I just can do one thing for you. Acceptance decision for audit. Audit means a new client. Accepting a new client, and you should know how to accept a new client. And acceptance decision for an assurance engagement. That is an engagement from an existing client. From an existing client. And this article explores the matters. You read this article and you will get to know the matters when you accept a new client. And if you get something in December 19 exam, you can write it proper. And matters for accepting a service from an existing client, you go through this article and you can write the matters. So will you take a proper notes from this article of the two things? Matters for accepting a new client, matters for accepting a engagement from an existing client. You cannot go untouched in exam hall with this article. I even recommended this article on the day one. I hope all of you remember that, right? Do you remember this article was recommended on the first day? Question number one, because you might get the new client in the first question. You might get to do the planning of a new client in the first question. What if the question number one is on a new audit client and the examiner asks you something about the new audit client in the first question? Then what will you do? Right? So irrespective of the engagement, you need to know the matters which you should be answering. And then there can be something case specific, right? There could be a specific matter in the case which you can extract out. So I think the better definition, when you're writing these matters, right, what you can do, uh, these matters can be divided into two parts. These matters can be divided into two parts. One of them can be rote learn, and you adapt the rote learn in the exam paper. You change the rote learn, adapt the rote learn. You go to the exam hall with competence, deadlines, ethical issues, safeguard, and fees. That's good. But you can connect them with a case study. And what if apart from the rote learn matters, there is some case specific matter? There is something very case specific given, and you definitely think this is a matter before accepting an engagement. Will you be highlighting the case specific matter as well? There could be something special in the case which can be really important before you accept an engagement from a client. So one is the rote learn list, which you can take to the exam hall and then you can adapt the rote learn list. But one matter could be case specific, and we cannot be prepared for that because examiner is writing a case and he can give anything in the case. So is everyone clear on the matters definition? And I hope you're getting my point, right? One is a rote learn matter and one is a case specific matter. I can get you quick feedback for this. Is everyone sound on matters and breakdowns of matter? You need to explore September 18 question, right, as your homework for December 19 exams. Right, so that's one thing. Okay, let's go down discussing the second thing. What was else in the question? Yes, there should be a combination of both in the answer. Okay, then in the second part of the September 18 question, for 9 marks, the examiner is asking us to write assuming the audit firm accepts the engagement, recommend the procedures. You need to recommend the procedures to be performed on the forecast statement of profit and loss account. You need to perform procedures on the forecast statement of profit and loss account, and you have 9 marks. Now, I've done this topic in my previous webinars. I'm not touching upon it, but I just want to give you some fundamentals. You need to perform procedures. We know procedures is an integral part of AAA paper. You cannot go unprepared on procedures. You should know the techniques of procedures. I've covered techniques of procedures in my previous webinar so many times. But over here, you need to perform procedures on a forecast statement of profit and loss account. It is not historical. We are doing prospective financial information. So we have 9 marks. Let's see how we are tackling these 9 marks here. Let's make a rule of thumb very clear here. In the second part of the question, you need to make procedures on the forecast profit and loss, profit or loss account. And we have 9 marks. Procedures. I have covered the fundamentals of procedures in my September 19 webinar. I've recommended that in my June 19 webinar, in my March 19 webinar. I have given you the techniques to write procedure. Everyone should know the techniques of procedures. You should know the techniques of procedures. And I have guided these techniques in my last webinar very specifically. Techniques of procedures. Now, you want to have a black and white techniques of procedures. You want to have something documented on techniques of procedures. Then again, the solution lies on visiting the website of AAA. You visit the website of AAA and you go into the articles again. And in the article, there is an article right in front of your screen now, which is this article. See this article and see the title of this article. This is audit procedures irrespective of the topic. An examiner is telling what student do good in a procedure and what student do bad in a procedure. Even though I've covered this article in my previous webinar, I have gone through this article in my previous webinar, but it is your responsibility to read it. So will you be linking this article to the question answer now, September 18? You will read this article first, then you will attempt the September 18 question. And you will be amazed how you will transform the quality of the audit. So if you read articles first, then you do the past papers and you connect the articles with the past paper, your quality of answer will improve so much. Is everyone realizing that since the day one? That there are certain requirements in a question for which there is an article. And if you read the article for that requirement, you make notes of that requirement, and then you connect that with the exam, with your exam question, the answer will be so good. So this article becomes very important. So examiner is saying you should be writing procedures, techniques, procedures, how to write them. But over here, we are writing procedures on what? We are writing procedures on a forecast. Profit and loss. We know profit and loss account as accountants, as auditors. We know what is a profit and loss account. We know the historical profit and loss account. But when it is a forecast, that's something different. Forecast means something which is based upon assumptions. And we know as accountants that whenever there are assumptions, these assumptions are very, very risky. Why assumptions are risky? Can you all give me answers quickly? It's your time now. Give me answers. Why assumptions are risky from a view of an auditor? Why auditor perceive assumptions are risky? Yes, the good answer, subjectivity, management bias. They involve judgments, right? Manipulations, so good answers. So do you believe that when we are doing procedures on forecast, should our procedures be linked to these assumptions? Should our procedures be linked to these assumptions? Is that true? And should we be verifying these assumptions? We should verify whether these assumptions are valid. Are we concerned about the validity of the assumptions, about the realisticness of the assumption, about the reasonableness of the assumptions? So what we need to do for 9 marks, should we see the assumptions given by the management of the forecast? And should we see whether these assumptions are realistic or not? Is that true? Is everyone getting my point? So the focal point of the procedures in this question is to realize that the assumptions given by the management, are they good, are they bad, are they valid, are they invalid? So should my procedure be focused on the assumptions and the validity of the assumption? Is everyone sound on that? Right. So now let's see whether the assumptions are given in the September 18 question. See this. This is the forecast profit and loss account. You can see the forecast profit and loss account here. And the 20x8 is the historical year. This is the historical year, 20x8. And the 2 years after, 20x9 and 20y0 is the forecasted period. So these are the forecasted periods here, these two. So the management has forecasted 2 years. Now see, they have forecasted the revenue. Note number 1. What assumptions have they taken in forecasting the revenue? What assumptions have they taken to forecast the cost of sales? What assumptions have they taken to forecast the administrative expenses? And what assumptions have they taken to forecast the finance cost? So see, the assumptions are given. Now what you need to do here is that you need to read these assumptions, 4 assumptions. You need to read the assumptions for revenue. You need to read the assumption for cost of sales. You need to read the assumptions for expenses and the finance cost. And you need to confirm the validity of these assumptions. You need to make procedures on these assumptions. How many procedures? 9. How many assumptions we have? 4. So if we can roughly make like 1 and 2 procedures per assumption, we can reach to 9. On some assumptions, we might make more procedures. On some, we might make less, but we need to reach 9 procedures, right, to verify the assumptions. So is everyone getting the track of how we attempt an answer? And is this planning giving you some understanding? Is this planning giving you some better understanding of how to attack an answer? Because a lot of time you must have done these questions in past paper, PFI, prospective financial information. Yes, 1 mark per procedure, right? 1 mark per procedure. Procedure, whenever they come in AAA, wherever they come in AAA, every procedure is worth 1 mark. So you have to make 9 procedures. So you will read the note number 1, you will read the note number 2, you will read the note number 3, you will read the note number 4, and you will try digging out the procedures. Now I just want to give you one final clue here, that when you are making procedures, and your procedures is based upon the validity or the reasonableness or the realisticness of the assumptions given, and you want to make procedures on the validity, reasonableness, and realisticness of the assumption given, where each procedure is worth 1 mark, and you start writing procedures. Now, firstly, the procedures have to be case specific, and you need to read the note numbers, note 1, note 2, note 3, and 4 to get procedures out of that. But you need to make 9 procedures, right? As a last procedure, as a last procedure, You know, assumptions are subjective. Even though you do so much work, they're still subjective. So we know as the last procedure for assumptions in exam paper, as a last procedure for assumption in exam paper, you can obtain a representation letter from the management. You can take a representation letter on the completeness of assumptions, on the adequacy of assumptions, on the adequacy of assumptions used, adequacy of assumptions used. But you cannot write this as your first procedure. You need to write procedures from note number 1, note number 2, note number 3, note number 4. But because you are working on a forecast, which is an assumption, as a last procedure, as the ninth procedure in the exam hall, you can make use of a representation letter. Do everyone realize the importance of a representation letter when it comes to assumptions in exam paper? So wherever assumption comes in exam paper, like a provision, like an estimate, like a fair value, how many times, how many times have you seen estimates in past papers, fair values in past paper, fair values, estimates, provisions, forecast? You need to make use of a representation letter, but as a last resort. Right? So a representation letter has to be obtained from management, right? You seek a representation letter, that's a procedure. But this representation letter will go in your working papers as an evidence. So don't get confused between evidence and a procedure, right? You're seeking a representation letter. So seeking is a procedure, but the representation letter will go to your working papers as an evidence. Right, so is everyone sound on procedures from September 18? Will you be attacking writing procedures and comparing your procedures with the examiner answer? I've given you the clues of procedures, I've given you the breakdown of procedures, I've given you the structure of procedure. You can see my previous webinars for it, but I will prefer that you write procedures yourself 9 and then reconcile your 9 procedures with the examiner and see how many of those are right. Even if you get 50 to 60% of your procedures matching the examiner, that's wonderful. But as a last procedure, you can obtain representation. Now, one last clue. When you're writing procedures on assumptions, any assumption, you need to realize who made these assumptions. Who made these assumptions? Who made these assumptions? Quick answers. The management. So if I want to know the basis of assumption, who will give me the basis of assumption? Who will give me the underlying basis of assumption? Management. So in an exam paper, when you are doing something on assumptions and you know the assumptions are made by management, so do you believe this is a very valid procedure when you are verifying the assumption of the management, that is to discuss with management the basis of the assumptions? Is that an important procedure? Because management made the assumptions, right? So when the management made the assumption, should we be discussing with management the basis of assumption? So I'm giving you clues for 9 procedures, right? So basis of assumption should be discussed with management, because who knows the assumptions? The management. And yes, then we can confirm the assumptions from any source document. But do you believe discussion is one of the many procedures on assumption? Give me an answer. Do you believe discussion is one of the many procedures on assumption? Yes. Do you believe a representation is one of the many procedures on assumption? Representation letter. So I've given you 2 clues, right? Discuss, representation, but you can make the rest yourself, right? So this was from the September 18 question. The September 18 question asking you to write procedures. And the last thing from the September 18 question, and then we're going off break. The part B of the September 18 question is an area which I've covered in my previous webinar, so I'm not touching upon that. But I want to make you realize that the entire question 3 is not on the syllabus area F. There was 15 marks on the syllabus area F, 9 and 6. But then when you look at the 10 marks in the in this B area, the B area is on the typical requirement of the AAA paper. Comment on the quality of planning and performing the audit, discussing the quality control and professional issues. Discussing the quality control and professional issues for 10 marks, where every issue is worth 1 mark. Discuss the quality control and professional issues. Discuss the quality control and professional issues. And this is a typical requirement which I've done in the previous webinars. So you have to see the previous webinars and you need to know how you write quality control and professional issues. 1 mark per quality control and professional issues. So we've done 2 questions before the break. The first one was December 18. In December 18, we had money laundering, knowledge area, and with money laundering, we had ethical and professional issues. Then in September 18, we had prospective financial information, which was a syllabus area F, followed by quality control and professional issues. So is everyone sound on question 3? Now we're left with one of the question 3 and a very important question 3, and that is what I will be doing right after the break. That is question 3 of the June 19 exams, and that will be an eye opener for all of you, because most of you in this webinar might have attempted June 19 as an exam setting, might have flunked in June 19 and are preparing back for December 19 exams, and it will be an eye opener for you that how easy June 19 question 3 was, and you really spoiled it. And I want to give you an insight that the question 3 from the June 19 exam was on a current issue, which was the current issue for June 19 exams. And that will make you realize how important current issues are for your December 19 exams. So let's take a break. Please drop in your feedback before I go off break. How has been this first 1 hour and 45 minutes? And if you can just drop a feedback for this first 1 hour and 45 minutes prior to I go off break. Okay, so please keep dropping your feedback about the session so far, the first 1 hour and 45 minutes. And I will be joining you back live at 8 p.m. So 8 p.m., please be back to the session as I will be exploring the June 19 question number 3 and will be an eye opener for all of you. Okay, it's time for a break. Welcome back after the break for the last part of the day 4 Practice to Pass webinar for Advanced Audit and Insurance being organized by ACCA Pakistan. I am Kashif Kamran. Now, we were just discussing prior to the break on the day 4, the September 18 and the December 18 question number 3. And we just identified how important, how critical it is to read and understand the question and to have a better understanding of the examiner articles in order to write a very good answer. Now I'm taking on the last question, the question 3, which is available, which is the June 19 question number 3, and which is the most recent uploaded paper of the AAA by ACCA. And this will give you an amazing overview of how important current issues are and how current issue gets examined within the AAA exams. Now, if I take you to the question 3 of the June 19 exams, which is now in front of your screen. Right. And in this June 19 exams, question number 3, prior to this exam sitting, just want to build some context here, right? That when this exam sitting happened in June 19, prior to this exam sitting, I think in the month of April, or perhaps early in the April, the examiner came with an article, which you can see right here on your screen. This article was published by the examiner, which was IAASB Exposure Draft, Proposed International Standard on Auditing 540 Revised, Auditing Accounting Estimates and Related Disclosure. And we know whenever the examiner write an article, then only the current issue becomes important. It's not like that every exam setting we get current issues in AAA. No. If you see the last 5 years, last 6 years, you will hardly see 3 or 4 times the current issues have come in exam paper. So the golden rule of thumb in AAA is that whenever the examiner writes an article, then only the examiner will test a current issue. So this article, which is in front of your screen, which I have bracketed in a green box, was published somewhere in April or perhaps even in March 2019. And then came the June 19 exam sitting. And in the June 19 exam sitting, the examiner tested ISA 540, International Standards on Auditing ISA 540, Accounting Estimates and Related Disclosure for a complete question. Now try to realize this. Now look at this question in front of your screen and read the requirement here. The examiner mentioned the standard in the requirement. Explain why accounting estimates are considered to be a source of high audit risk, and discuss the reason for the development of ED 540, commenting on its proposals for an enhanced risk assessment in relation to the audit of accounting estimate. Now see, the examiner is testing the knowledge. Whenever a current issue comes in AAA, you expect examiner to give you knowledge on current issue with a case study or without a case study. Now, knowledge is must every time. Now, for example, this time data analytics is important. Examiner might test the knowledge of data analytics from the article. So reading of article is important. And then it's up to the examiner whether the examiner connects data analytics with a case study or not. But at least knowledge, that is must. So see, for 8 marks, the examiner is testing the knowledge. Explain why accounting estimates are considered as a source of high risk, and discuss reasons for the development of ED 540. reasons for the development of ED 540, commenting on its proposals for enhanced risk assessment. Now, if any student must had read this article prior to entering the exam hall for June 19, he must had read the article for the development of ED 540, why this was developed, and he must have read the proposals for enhanced risk given in the article. Now, I hope among many of you who are taking this as a live session today, uh, some of you must have given the June 19 exam setting. And when you saw this question, it must have been a nightmare for you if you have not read the article prior to entering the exam hall. And obviously, for those who did read this article and entered the exam hall, they must have seen this question as soothing because it was testing the knowledge given in the examiner article. So do you realize examiner testing the ED 540 here? And this was written by the examiner. And the examiner is expecting from you that you know why ED 540 was developed and what has been the proposals of ED 540 for enhanced risk assessment for 8 marks. And this was exactly in the article. You open this article and you see the development. This is the development, introduction and background. The introduction and the background is giving us why the ED 540 was developed. Now, if you've read the introduction and background, you know why ED 540 was developed by the IAASP and what proposals has been given for risk assessment arising out of accounting estimates. And you explore the article down. See, this is the proposals responding to the risk of material misstatement arising from an accounting estimate. Now, the ED 540 is giving you a proposal that what should the auditor do? See, you can read over here the proposed approach. Proposed approach means this is not yet implemented, but this is a proposal of what the auditor should do in terms of the risk of material misstatement arising out of an accounting estimate, what you should do. And that is given in the bullets here, what you should do. So the entire article, the knowledge of the entire article was tested. For 8 marks. So the 8 marks answer lies in the article. And then the examiner came with the B part. And in the B part, the examiner came with a case study. And in the case study, the examiner gave situations of all accounting estimates. Every situation was an accounting estimate. See this last line. The detailed audit fieldwork has started and the audit supervisor has brought the following matters. The audit supervisor has brought the following matters to your attention in relation to the testing of accounting estimates. And the accounting estimates are given below. The first accounting estimate given is the cash settled share based payment scheme. That's one. The second, and we have 6 marks allocated to this. The second accounting estimate given was the penalties because the company was recognizing a provision on the penalties. So provision was a estimate, and for the provision royal regulatory penalties, 6 marks. Then property development. There was a fair value of the property. The property development, the fair value of the property development was a estimate, 5 marks. So examiner has given you 6 plus 6 plus 5. That's 17 marks on a case study involving accounting estimates. And we know accounting estimate is a regular feature. Accounting estimate is a regular feature of the AAA exams. So many times you get accounting estimates in the question number 1 on risk. So many times in the question number 1 on risk, you get an accounting estimate. And you know the properties of accounting estimate. You know there is a risk in accounting estimate. You know the accounting estimates are subjective. Management has a risk of window dressing the financial statements in accounting estimates. So the examiner tested the accounting estimates for 17 marks. But what was the requirement of the question? What was the examiner asking? See the requirement. Of this question. Okay, unfortunately, the requirement is not into this handout. So I just need to open the actual question. Let me open the actual question to show you the requirement. Okay, if I just show you the actual question here, what was basically the requirement of this question you're looking at? Okay, so the examiner has given us the three situations involving the accounting estimate, and then the examiner is asking a question which is right in front of your screen, right? You can download this June 19 exam from the ACC website because unfortunately in the PDF document, the requirement has not come in. So the requirement is now in front of your screen. The requirement is evaluate the client accounting treatment, one. Number two, and the difficulties. Evaluate the client accounting treatment and the difficulties which you might encounter when auditing each of the accounting estimate described above. So there are three accounting treatments above: cash settled share-based payment scheme, regulatory penalties, and property development. And for each accounting treatment, we need to evaluate the accounting treatment and we need to discuss the difficulties which you may encounter when auditing each of the accounting estimate. What difficulties will the auditor face when the auditor is auditing the accounting estimate given above? Then the examiner says, design the audit procedures which should now be performed to gather evidence on the estimate. What procedures will you perform? We just discussed procedures prior to the break. Again, the examiner is asking the procedures you will be performing on an estimate for gathering evidence. So there are three estimates given in the question, right? And the examiner is asking us an important question in June 19, question number 3. And when you look at the part A of the question, it's upon the knowledge, and the knowledge which was directly coming from the examiner article. Knowledge directly from the examiner article on ED 540 for 8 marks. Then in the second part, the examiner was putting a case, and in the case, the examiner has given us three accounting issues, and those three accounting issues relates with accounting estimates, and then the examiner put in the requirement, and in the requirement the examiner asked us, number one, evaluate what he wants us to evaluate. Number one, evaluate the accounting treatment, and then evaluate the difficulties. The difficulties in auditing estimate. What difficulties will the auditor face in auditing estimate? So that was the first requirement, evaluate the accounting treatment and the difficulty in auditing the estimate. And in the second part, the examiner asked us to recommend procedures. recommend procedures on each estimate. What procedures will the auditor make? Now that is such an easy question, and I have no idea why the student spoiled that question in the June 19 exam sitting. We know that whenever the examiner asks you to evaluate the accounting treatment, is there something new the examiner asking you? Never. Examiner evaluating the accounting treatment is such a fundamental part of the AAA paper. When the examiner says evaluate the accounting treatment, that's so simple. When you evaluate the accounting treatment, the very first thing you are evaluating is its materiality. Whether the accounting treatment is material or not. And we do that across the AAA paper. That whenever there is an accounting treatment in a AAA, we take out the calculator and we find the materiality of the accounting treatment. Is it material? The materiality. And secondly, we do need to briefly explain the relevant accounting treatment. We need to briefly explain the relevant accounting treatment. Because in this question, the examiner is saying evaluate the accounting treatment. So briefly explain the relevant accounting treatment and evaluate whether the treatment adopted by the management is right or wrong. Because evaluate means to conclude something, right? Evaluate means to conclude something. Firstly, when you are evaluating the accounting treatment, you are telling, is it material? Then you are telling whether what is the treatment itself. You need to explain the treatment as per your knowledge, and then you evaluate whether the treatment adopted by the management is right or wrong. And if it is wrong, then what is the likely impact? Examiner is not asking us the impact here. The examiner is simply saying evaluate the treatment. The examiner is not saying evaluate the treatment and recommend the impact on the financial statement or recommend the impact on the audit report. So should we be writing the impact on the financial statement or the impact on the audit report in this question? Can I get your answers? No, because the examiner is simply asking the treatment. So for the treatment, we need to focus on the materiality. For the treatment, we should focus on whether it is right or wrong. If it is wrong, should we be telling the impact on the financial statement? No, because the examiner is not asking for that. So we just need to keep ourselves down to the materiality of the accounting treatment and the whether it is right or wrong. And then in the second case, you need to discuss the difficulties. What difficulties will the auditor face? Difficulties faced by auditor. Now we know each of the situation is an estimate. And do you believe generally, without looking at the case, do you believe auditing estimates is difficult for the auditor? Reply with your answers. Do you generally believe auditing estimates is difficult for the auditor? Right, so examiner is asking what difficulties will be faced by the auditor when he's auditing the estimate, and we need to find the difficulties very case specific, because there is a estimate given, right? So we need to read every estimate and we need to see what difficulties will the auditor find when auditing the particular estimate. And for every difficulty we'll get 1 mark per difficulty from the case study. There could be one, there could be more than one. So 1 mark per difficulty. And when you are evaluating the accounting treatment, because this was more like a new requirement, framed very differently in June 19 paper, but we know generally we get 1 mark for materiality and we get 1 mark for explaining the accounting treatment. So that was a pretty simple question, asking us to evaluate the accounting treatment. What difficulties will be faced by the auditor when working on the estimate, and then finally asking us to write the procedures. 1 mark per procedure. And we know the procedures have to be case specific. Examiner has written an article on procedure. I just justified that prior to the break. So is everyone clear with the breakdown of the question? What is exactly the question asking for? And have you realized how important is it in the exam to break the question, even if it is a difficult question, till the time you don't break it, or till the time you don't break and read it? How will you know what is the examiner asking? Is it important to break the question, read the question, then understand what is the examiner asking? How many times we don't do that in exam paper? If the question is difficult, a student makes the question more difficult because the student does not realize the importance of reading and breaking the question. Now see what I did. I just broke the question and I just read the question. And in the last 10 minutes, I'm just reading the question just to make you realize what is the question asking. Now, if you know what is the question asking, do you believe there is a significant chance of writing the answer in a better way? Do you believe there is a significant chance of writing the answer in a better way if you know the question requirement very well and the marking scheme very well? So no question is difficult, right? No question is difficult. It's only that you should understand it. And don't be in a rush. Don't be in a rush in exam paper. Try to spend an extra 1 minute or an extra 2 minutes or an extra 3 minutes on reading and understanding the requirement. If you understand it, then you have marks and marks and marks to gain. And if you don't understand the requirement, then obviously you're not gaining marks on the question requirement. So let's do one exercise from this question. Evaluate the accounting treatment. Is it material? Briefly explain the treatment. What difficulties will be faced by the auditor? And then the procedures. Right? Let's do one illustration from the question. An illustrative answer. Okay, I'm writing an illustrative answer. Be very careful because this is the first time I'm doing it in my session. The illustrative answer of one of the part. Okay, I'm doing the illustrative answer for the very first part, which is a cash settled share-based payment scheme here. And we have 6 marks allocated to this requirement. And in the 6 marks, we need to do 3 things. Cash settled share-based payment scheme. Let's write a proper answer. Cash settled share-based payment scheme. 6 marks. And 6 marks are divided into 3 parts. First, the accounting treatment. Evaluate the accounting treatment. Then the difficulties, and then the procedures. See, now when you know the format, you can score marks. But if you don't know the formats, how will you score marks? Now see, looking at 6 marks, it is so soothing that yes, for 6 marks, I need to do 3 things. I need to judge the accounting treatment. I need to discuss the difficulties. I need to discuss the procedures and take my marks up to 6. And everything I am doing, I'm getting 1 mark. So let's first start with the accounting treatment. Evaluate the accounting treatment. Number 1. I'm reading the accounting treatment, right? And just let's first see the draft financial statement recognized total assets of 58 million and the profit before tax of 7.4 million. So these values will help us to determine the materiality. So the total assets of this company is $58 million and the profit of the company is $7.4 million. Okay. I'm reading the cash settled share-based payment scheme. On 1st March, Audrey Company granted 550,000 share appreciation rights to 55 executives and senior employees of the company, with each eligible member of the staff receiving 10,000 rights. The fair value of the rights was estimated. Can you see the estimate? The fair value of the rights was estimated on the 28th of Feb 2009 by an external expert using an option pricing model at $4.50 each. Now we know cash settled share-based payment plan, you need to recognize a liability and you need to recognize an expense each year on the basis of the fair value at the year end. And any difference between the fair value you recorded last time and you record this time will be taken to the profit and loss account. I hope everyone has a sound accounting treatment of IFRS 2, that you need to record the liability and expense each year on the basis of the fair value, and the difference should be taken to the profit and loss account. So company has done the right accounting treatment. They've taken the fair value at the year end. The year end is 28th of Feb 20x9. So at the year end, they've taken the fair value and they've determined the fair value for the liability to be recognized. So far the accounting treatment is right. Audrey company pride itself on a good employee relationship, and the senior management team has estimated. See, can you see another estimate? The senior management team has estimated that all 55 staffs will qualify for the rights when they vest 3 years after the granting of the right. Can you see two estimates taken in this case? One estimate is the fair value. I need your answers quickly. Do you see the first estimate, the fair value? Right? And do you see the second estimate? The second estimate is that all the 55 staffs will qualify for the right, and they will when they vest 3 years. So is the company taking an assumption that none of the employee will leave the company in 3 years? Is the company taking an assumption that none of the employee will leave in the next 3 years because they think all the options will vest? So is the company taking an assumption that the employee turnover will be 0%? Do you all believe that the company is taking an assumption that the employee turnover will be 0%? So it could be realistic, it could be unrealistic. So one assumption is the fair value. One assumption is that the company is taking an assumption that there will be a zero employee turnover and all the options will vest. And the company has recognized a straight line expense this year of $825,000. And that's on the basis of the fair value, right? If you calculate, you will get the right answer. $550,000 is the 550,000 share appreciation rights have been given, and each of them is valued at $4.50, and they are vesting over a 3-year period. If you make a calculation, $825,000 is the right amount which has been recognized in the financial statements for this year. So is the accounting treatment right in this case? Is the accounting treatment right in this case? Yes. So when we are evaluating, right? When we are evaluating, we are evaluating and telling the examiner the accounting treatment is right. Right? Some of you are saying the accounting treatment is not right. Why? And Faizan Ahmed, the total value you identified, 2475000, you need to divide that by 3, because that's to be recognized over a 3-year period. So if you divide that value with 3, you will get 825,000. This is the first time, right? This is the first time you're recognizing the liability and an expense. You awarded them on 1st of March 20x8. So from 1st March 20x8, this is the first year end, and you determine the fair value at the first year end. The next time when you will determine the fair value, the difference will go to the profit and loss account. Now that's very skeptical. The company has recognized a straight line expense in the draft account of $825,000. Now obviously they must have debited the expense and credited the liability. So we're not becoming skeptical here that they've not credited the liability. That's very obvious. When they've debited the expense, they must have taken the credit in the liability, obviously. And this is the first time, right? They're recognizing the expense, right? The next year, 2020 Y0, when they recognize the fair value, the difference will go to the P&L. This is the first time, so they're recognizing it at $4.50, which is a fair value for the first time. And the A25 is the right calculation. So let's see how you write the answer. You will first tell examiner the expense and the liability recognized this year of 825,000 in respect of the cash settled share based payment scheme represents. Can you divide this value with the profit and the total assets, because there is an expense and there is a liability. There is an expense and there is a liability. So if you divide $825,000 with the total assets and then with the profit, so this represents 11.1% of the profit before tax and 1.4% of the total assets. Thus, material to the financial statements. And you take your first mark. You evaluated the accounting treatment in terms of its materiality, and you take your first mark from that evaluation. Number two, please, a lot of students needs to revise their accounting standards IFRS 2. A lot of students are putting questions which brings doubt on your revision of the IFRS 2. Please ensure that you revise the IFRS 2 very properly. Okay, then you evaluate the treatment and you say, for a cash settled share based, see, I'm writing the treatment now. For the cash settled share based payment transactions, the entity should recognize, the entity should measure the services acquired and the liability incurred at the fair value of the liability at the fair value at each year end. Moreover, until the liability is settled, the entity should remeasure the fair value of liability at each year end. So next year they will remeasure the fair value. Currently it's $4.50. If next year it's like $4.70, the difference will go to the profit and loss account. So they will remeasure the fair value of the liability at each year end. Should remeasure the fair value of the liability at each year end and at the date of settlement. The settlement has to take place after 3 years, right? And at the date of the settlement, with any changes taken in the profit and loss account. So each year you will remeasure your liability and taking the difference to the profit and loss account. Currently the fair value is $4.50. That's for the first year. Next year, the next year, you will keep measuring the liability with any difference going to the profit or loss account, because the fair value can keep fluctuating. Okay, now that means so far this accounting treatment which you wrote, this has been followed by the company. So you wrote the standard accounting treatment and you gain 1 mark for the standard accounting treatment. And then you conclude in the case the expense and the associated liability. Now you're concluding whether the management has done it right or wrong. In the case, the expense and the associated liability has been calculated on the basis of the fair value of the rights at the year end, and the treatment is correct. So in this case, the expense and the liability has been calculated on the fair value of the rights at the year end, and the treatment is correct. And in the bracket you show it, $4.50 was the fair value into $550,000. $550,000 was the share options into 1 divided by 3 is equal to 825,000. So this year we need to recognize an expense for 825,000 because it's based on 3 years. So the management has got the right number. So see, we got 1 mark for the materiality, 1 mark for writing the treatment of IFRS 2 and then concluding that the treatment adopted by the management is correct. It could have been wrong, but currently it's right, and gaining 1 mark for the right accounting, telling it's correct. 3 marks coming out of the accounting treatment. We need to score 6 marks. Now the examiner is asking in the second part, after you evaluated the accounting treatment, what difficulties will the auditor face when the auditor is auditing the estimates? Now, have you seen there are 2 estimates in this question? One is the fair value of the estimate $4.50, and secondly is that the management estimates that all the staff will be in the company, all the options will vest. Right. So do you all understand there were 2 estimates in the question? One estimate of the fair value, one estimate that the management believes that all options will vest. So difficulties. Can we write 2 difficulties then? One difficulty for the fair value. The fair value estimate of $4.50 is based on an option pricing model which is complex, which is a complex model and is based upon significant estimates and is therefore challenging for the auditor. So do you believe the option pricing model being used by the company will be a challenging area for the auditor? Even though this has been done by an expert and you can review the expert report, right? You can review the expert report. But will the auditor find a difficulty and a challenge because the option pricing model is a very complex model and is based upon many estimates? But when you are writing a procedure, can you write a procedure, review the expert report to confirm the assumptions taken by the expert in determining the fair value of $4.50? But as an option pricing model, that's a difficulty for the auditor. The second difficulty for the auditor is the management estimate that all 55 staff will qualify for the rights means that there is a zero employee turnover historically. which may be inaccurate, which may be inaccurate. So the predictive nature of management estimate is a challenge for the auditor. So whenever the management use an estimates for an auditor is difficult, right? Because estimates are very subjective and estimates are very predictive in nature. So do you understand how I wrote the difficulty? The first difficulty was the option pricing model, which could be very complex for the auditor. And secondly, the management is taking an assumption that all 55 staffs will qualify. So that assumption, because it's a predictive nature of the management and being an estimate of the management, it could be a challenge for the auditor. So I've taken 1 mark for one difficulty and 1 mark for the second difficulty because there were two estimates in this exam question. Now you need to write the procedures. I can write one procedure for the work of an expert. I can write one procedure like review the expert report to confirm the assumptions used in determining the fair value. And I can write my second procedure on the management assumption. I can discuss with management the historical, because that is the risk, whether the historical staff turnover has been zero in the company. So discuss with management the historical staff turnover, or rather discuss with the human resource management. They will have a better idea of this. Discuss with the human resource management the historical staff turnover, and is it really zero? Because the management thinks it's zero because they think all options, all staff will qualify for the right. Is it really zero? So I need to discuss this with management. I just need to make one procedure to get to 6. I just made 2 because there were 2 difficulties. To overcome the difficulty, you need to write a procedure, right? Because procedure will mitigate the difficulty. That how will you mitigate the difficulty? You will review the expert report to confirm the assumptions to mitigate the difficulty in the option pricing model, and you will discuss with management the basis of their assumption to mitigate the difficulty of the estimate made by the management. So whenever there is a difficulty, how the auditor overcome the difficulty? Auditor overcome the difficulty by gathering evidence, right? Or by performing procedures. Yes, we can also take a representation from the management because there are so many estimates. We can take a representation that all 55 staff will qualify. So you can take a representation from the management that all 55 staff will qualify. But try to give me an answer here. Have you got an understanding of what exactly was the examiner asking in the question? If I show you the question again on the screen. See the question now. The first part of the question was evaluate the client accounting treatment. What we did for that? For evaluating the accounting treatment, the very first thing we evaluated was what? I have your answers? So I know you have concentrated well. What was the first thing we evaluated for accounting treatment? The materiality. Good. And what was the second thing we evaluated for the accounting treatment? The treatment itself, right? And do we need to give a conclusion that whether the treatment was right or wrong? Yes. So if this requirement reoccurs in December 19 exam, evaluate the client accounting treatment. Are you clear with what this means? And difficulties which you might encounter. So difficulties will be in the case. You need to identify the difficulties from the case. And in this situation, we had 2 difficulties. So wherever there is an estimate, there is a difficulty. So you need to highlight the difficulty. And then writing a procedure. Should the procedure be case specific, or we can have rote learn procedures in exam paper? Should we write procedures from the case study, identified from the case study, right? They have to be case specific procedures, right? And did I wrote case specific procedures? The two I wrote, the expert report and discussing with management, the turnover, the employee turnover. So the procedures have to be case specific, right? So the expert report on the option pricing model was a case specific situation, and discussing with the human resource management that the turnover rate is 0. So on this track, you need to read the other two situations as your own work. Regulatory penalties, you read that and you will do the 6 marks for regulatory penalties. And on the same basis, you will do the property development and you will do 5 marks for property development. On the same track, I have mentioned the answer for share-based payment scheme, right? So this was a very recent question which came in June 19 exams, and it tested a requirement which was not a difficult requirement. The only thing was that the student were in haste or rush. I just read this requirement with you in the session, right? What was difficult? What was difficult in this requirement? Can you give me your responses? Do you find any difficulty in this requirement? So are you getting a conclusion of the day 4 that reading the requirement is very important? So nothing is difficult, right? But you need to have a good planning. You need to have a good planning. If you have a good planning, everything is possible. But if you have a bad planning, then ultimately you are not getting success in the AAA. If you want to be successful in AAA, right, then you need to assure that you plan the question very, very carefully. So you have a lot of time before exams on the 2nd of December. Whichever question you do, try to do it the way it has been taught to you in the session. Read it, understand it, break it, then see what you need to do. So I hope you will do that when you practice yourself back at home, breaking the question, understanding the question, and then attacking the answer. So this was a very recent paper, which I thought should be done as a question 3 today, so that you have an idea of this question, because a lot of times the student fails to understand such a question in exam paper. Right, so that's ending the 3 things we need to discuss today on the day 4. The 3 questions, September 18 question 3, we did that. December 18 question 3, we did that. June 19 question 3, we did that. Only the some parts of it. But I hope you must have got some insights from the day 4 today in terms of your understanding and in terms of some valuable insights which can later help you in your preparation for the December 19 exams, right? I am just discussing few very important things because we need to meet for the final day tomorrow, and you should be knowing the agenda of the final day so that you come prepared. Because if you come prepared for the day 5, will be very good, because that will really ensure that you had an effective learning tomorrow. Tomorrow is the 5th and the final day of this webinar, where this session will be wrapped up, and then you have your exams coming up on the 2nd of December. Now, over the 4 days, including the day today and the day coming tomorrow. The day tomorrow is all the knowledge areas. I'll be exploring all the knowledge areas tomorrow in terms of exam papers. Knowledge areas can be opening balances, knowledge areas can be professional skepticism, knowledge areas can be auditor responsibility for fraud, non-compliance with laws and regulations. There are so many knowledge areas which have come in the recent 3 years, 4 years past papers. So I need to explore a variety of past papers tomorrow to see how knowledge areas and which knowledge areas have been tested. And a lot of time, the student takes least interest in the knowledge areas in terms of the preparation. You need to understand that you are unsure of December 19 exam setting. What if the examiner tests some knowledge areas for 15 to 20 marks, just like money laundering we saw today? So examiner can test knowledge, right? And we should be prepared for that. So that's one agenda tomorrow, right? The second very important agenda tomorrow is data analytics. And I'll be exploring the article data analytics in a very different way tomorrow, because I want to give you an insight that as an accountant or as an auditor who is attempting a AAA paper, what you should be knowing about the article and what the article expects from you as a student. So I will have a very different perspective to the article on data analytics tomorrow, which will really give you an insight about how you should be preparing about the data analytics article and the knowledge areas, right, which is very, very important. So we're not focusing on any particular question tomorrow, because we've already focused on the question 1, we've already focused on the question 2, and we've already focused on the question 3. So just to make you realize something, just keep a strong focus for the last 5 to 6 minutes we are left with. Over the last 4 days, let's see, do we have the paper in focus? Now, we know that there are 3 questions in the AAA paper, 3 questions. And over the last 4 days, we have spent time on each of them. We have spent time on question 1, we've spent time question 2 yesterday, and we spent time on question 3 today. Now that gives you a holistic picture of the paper. And the good thing we have done across the 3 days, 4 days, is that now we know, firstly, what is included in the question 1 and 2 and 3. I hope everyone is sound on the objective of the question 1, 2, and 3. If I can get your answers to that. Is everyone sound on the objective of the question 1, 2, and 3? Do you know what comes in question 1, 2, and 3? At what stage of the question 1, 2, and 3 it's set? So do you know the stage at which the question 1, 2, and 3 is set? The stage at which these questions are set. Some are set at the planning stage, some are set at the completion and reporting stage, and some are open questions. We know the question 3 is the most open question. Then you scroll down and you realize that in the question 1, 2, and 3, which articles should I be going through? Which articles should I be preparing for question 1, 2, and 3? Which past papers should I be doing for question 1, 2, and 3? Which past papers should I be doing, and how? The marking scheme. What is the marking scheme of these question 1, 2, and 3? What is the marking scheme? What your examiner expects from you? The marking schemes of the question 1, 2, and 3. So I hope that the 4 days, including the one today, is giving you a picture of the paper in front of you, and is giving you a realization that the 3 questions are doable only if we are prepared for them. And it is so difficult, right? You need to read the articles, you need to take points from the article, you need to make notes from the articles, then you need to practice. See, the 2 things, articles, practice, articles, practice, article, practice. If you do that over the next 20-25 days, you will be successful in AAA. Articles, practice, articles, and practice. And that's the best way you can pass your AAA exams. And I've been recommending articles since my day 1. And eventually, now we have all the 3 questions ready. We know question 1, we know question 2, we know question 3. We have every structure right, ready, done in front of us. So now I need some quick answers from your side. Question number 1, is everyone sound on question 1? What comes in question 1? How to prepare question 1? Is everyone sound on that from the day 1 and day 2? Okay, that's great. Is everyone sound on the question 2? What comes in question 2 and how to prepare yourself for question 2? Okay. And is everyone now sound on the question 3, which we are ending today? So have you realized that AAA is doable? But with doable, you need an approach. If you have a right approach, you can pass AAA. But if you have a wrong approach to AAA exams, you will fail. And the right approach is spend time on the website, the articles website, this website. Spend your time on this website. The more time you spend on these technical articles given by the examining team, the more time you invest on the technical article, the more time you spend on this website over the next 20 days, the better you are. And the less time you spend on these technical articles, in exploring these technical articles, you're making your life difficult for AAA. So this is the strongest recommendation I'm giving you, that spend your time on technical article. Make a habit of reading 1 to 2 articles on a daily basis over the next 20 days and do practice. Recent papers, 2018, 2017, 2019. I've been recommending recent papers to all of you, right? So practice, practice, practice of the recent papers. And wherever you get stuck, see the examiner answer. Not for the length, but for the point. Only see the point from the examiner article, right? Not the way the examiner writes, right? So is everyone sound on the learnings from this webinar so far? And has it been productive? Has it really given you a dimension to prepare for December 19 exams? And the good thing with this webinar is that it is being conducted early this time. So you almost have like 3 weeks to prepare for your exams. So tomorrow it ends, and then you have a plenty of time. You have 3 weeks after the webinar ends to prepare effectively for your exams. Right, so please keep dropping your feedbacks as we enter the last 2 to 3 crucial minutes of the day 4. Your suggestions and your feedbacks would be really valuable for the day 5 and the final day to commence tomorrow. And on the day 5, please, one thing I've been recommending at the start, that you please read this article for tomorrow, Data Analytics and the Auditor. This is a must to read article for tomorrow's session, because I'll be exploring this article in depth tomorrow. Because there is no past paper on data analytics, so we need to study this article and think about what examiner can ask, what sort of a question the examiner can raise on data analytics. So that is something I'll be doing and drilling tomorrow. And just one final emphasis, please assure one thing which we are missing from here. For question 1, 2, and 3, you should also know the time management. And is everyone clear on the time management you need to follow in the AAA paper? What's the time management rule in AAA? Every mark will be multiplied by how much minutes? 1.95, right? 1.95. I've been consistently emphasizing on 1.95 since my day 1. And how much time should we be spending on reading and planning out of 1.95 minutes? 1/4. And do you see importance of that 1/4 time? Do you realize the importance of 1/4 time? Right, so please follow the time management when you're practicing back at home. Set a timer at home. I normally prefer students to set timers and do questions in a time barred, because a lot of time you don't do this time barred exercises at home. Do time barred exercises at home, right? Set a timer, do the question within a time boundary so that you are better prepared for your exams in December, right? It's time to sign off from this fourth day, the second last day, and I'll be meeting you back for the fifth and final day tomorrow. I hope you had productive learnings today and over the 4 days of this webinar. And uh, have a nice day. I wish you success in your exams coming up. It's time to sign off from the fourth day of the Advanced Audit and Assurance Practice to Pass webinar. I am Kashif Kamran, and these webinars are being organized by ACCA Pakistan. So there is a lot of contribution of the professional body ACCA and the Pakistan chapter in organizing these webinars for the benefits of the students, right? So goodbye and Allah Hafiz, and I'll see you tomorrow for the fifth and final day.